Medical care is probably one of the most expensive pieces of that, and private businesses are not going to want to tackle that, and I think that's the area that they are constitutionally required to provide medical care and mental health care. I mean, what we have been seeing an enormous increase in the number of suicides in these facilities, and it's happening because we are placing people who are mentally ill in segregated confinement for years. And people are just there, we're seeing an increase, and the increase in the number of suicides is directly related to the cuts that we've seen in the provision of medical care. And so we've gone from upwards of 8 or 9 doctors to now having 1.5 physicians, and I think that they're going to have a difficult time sort of maintaining costs low if they're going to ensure that we have these humane conditions. And I think what has been unfortunate is that we are not having conversations and about how to at least start reducing some of those nonviolent offenders. So I think there is a connection that's been reported. We're focusing as an organization on trying to figure out how to relay that message to legislators about the need for sentencing reform, because we just cannot sustain it. If we keep at this current pace, we're going to have to we're going to be spending over $1 billion a year just to build and maintain prisons to accommodate all these people that we're arresting for nonviolent offenses. Yes?
It's my understanding that there was a bill recently introduced in the state legislature requiring that private prisons meet the same criteria for care, housing, and so forth of prisoners as the state prisons. But this was not accepted.
Right. It was introduced, I believe, one of the sponsors was Democrat Chad Campbell, and it was to ensure that they're maintaining and providing the same security. I mean, this is in response to the Kingman security breach. And yes, I mean, that was, it's very, we're talking about a very hostile legislature where the moderate, there aren't any more moderate Republicans. The moderate Republicans who were outspoken against SB 1070, for example, they were ostracized by Pierce, and Pierce is using his sort of heavy hand to promote his agenda. And we have not resolved our $1 billion budget deficit, and yet we're having hearings on the 14th Amendment. We're having hearings on how to rewrite the 14th Amendment at the state level without trying to figure out how to close this budget gap. And so I think it just demonstrates how sort of misguided their agendas are. Yes?
I was wondering, I'll stop asking after this question, but it seems to me they just recently approved some sort of a panel that would decide whether federal laws were acceptable.
Right, this is the sort of unofficial seceding. Right, so it's creating a commission to assess whether or not they're going to abide by.
Will that have any impact, or is it strictly illegal?
I mean, I honestly, like when our lobbyist emailed us and was like, oh my gosh, this is crazy. And I was like, right, it's crazy and it's unconstitutional, and I think that they're going to be, I mean, the supremacy clause of the US Constitution mandates and states that federal laws are supreme. And I think what we've seen here is that our legislature feels like it's appropriate to sort of pick and choose which portions of the Constitution they're going to abide by. And it's very clear. I mean, it's one of the reasons why SB 1070 wasn't joined, because Arizona does not have the authority to impose its own immigration enforcement system. So,
really, the last one, where is AB 1070 from the standpoint of court cases right now? Aren't there some pending decisions? There's
a pending decision waiting out of the federal government has a case that was argued before the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, and we are waiting on that decision from the Ninth Circuit. Then our case is currently at the federal district court level, and the recent activity in that case was the judge confirmed that race was a motivating factor in the passage of SB 1070, which was a huge development for us, and that case is moving forward. And so despite the fact that a lot of the sheriffs are saying, well, they're publicizing the fact that they're being attacked by the ACLU, but we're winning and they're losing. And I think that that's very, very important, because we have the Constitution on our side. And it doesn't matter what Tom Horn says or what Russell Pierce says, that's what we rely on. And when we go to court, that's how we win. And we're a nonprofit. I can't afford to go and file a lawsuit that's frivolous that we know we're not going to win. And so that case, but again, we're waiting for the Ninth Circuit to rule whether or not they're going to overturn Bolton's decision. Yes?
For a number of years, I've read about Tom Horn as the superintendent of public instruction trying to destroy the ethnic studies program in the Tucson schools. And he finally got the legislature to outlaw it.
Yes.
Now he's the attorney general for the state, and 3 teachers, I understand, have tried to file some kind of a suit. ACLU involved?
We are not. The suit is being litigated by a private attorney in Tucson. It's Richard Martinez, I believe his name is, on behalf of the teachers. We've done a lot of records requests, and we were lobbying against the bill when it was moving through the legislature, and we have the records that we received from the state. But I think it's important. It's an important case to litigate, and I think it's important. We see that issue as a fundamental free speech issue. It is a question of Tom Horn has used this issue to advance his political campaign and promote his agenda for quite some time now. And as soon as he came into office, the first thing he did was send a letter to the Tucson Unified School District informing them that if they don't revamp their classes, their curriculum, they're going to face a cut of 10% in terms of state education funding. And so, this is what's, before, when I was in school, we would have, the librarians come in and just pull down the books that were considered offensive or that were inappropriate for our young guys to read. And what's happening now is, this is the new era of censorship, is that you have government officials dictating what is politically acceptable content in the classrooms. And at a time when the programs were created specifically to address concerns about segregated schools in Tucson. They've been around for years. And parents asked for these programs because they felt it was necessary to talk about the importance of multiculturalism. And given everything that's happening in the state, especially with regard to SB 1070 and immigration, this is when these students need to be having these discussions in the classroom about race, about immigration, about Mexican-American contributions to our culture in our state. And Tom Horn doesn't agree with that. Yes?
Those of us who come from states where ethnic studies were accepted and assumed, sometimes there were challenges, but ethnic studies are more about, about educating as well, about educating the non-ethnic group, whether they're African American studies, Latino studies, Chinese American studies, whatever. As long as they're open to everyone to participate in, and they benefit everybody. It's the goofiest thing to cut them out. But that was just a comment that the question I have is that whether or not the lobbyists for ACLU at the legislature actually can get anything done, talk to anybody, whether they listen to you. I know that when my daughter is involved with human services, social services group, and they go down and try to lobby, and she comes back absolutely livid. Her voice goes higher and higher. We talk on the phone about how crazy it is because nobody will listen to them. Nobody wants to talk to them even. You can't even get a hearing. Sometimes.
Oh yeah. Well, I think
how is that for you?
I think that's a reality. We're even though our bill, for example, our anti-shackling bill, and it was important for us to introduce this piece of legislation. First of all, because we had the support. I'll give you this concrete example, and then I'll talk a little bit big picture. In most states, the Department of Corrections is vehemently opposed to a bill banning shackling. Not in Arizona. The irony here is that the Arizona Department of Corrections has a great policy prohibiting the shackling of pregnant women during labor.
When you say shackling, are you talking about legs being shackled?
4-point restraints, so hands and feet during labor. Okay. Women shackled when they're giving birth.
But are they, shackled so they can't move at all, or shackled just?
Shackled to the bed.
Well,
yeah, so shackled hands and feet to the bed.
Because they might get up and walk away.
Because they might get up and walk away, which is why our PIO said, I will take off the shackles only if you have an epidural, because if you don't have an epidural, then you will get up and walk away. And so, but I think that this bill is an example of, bipartisan support. It includes some bipartisan support, and we're waiting to get a hearing. I think it was important for us to introduce it because we felt that it was an important issue on the issue of prisoner rights, and we had a great policy at the state level. But I think you're right. I mean, I think we have to be creative about our strategies. We have to, the one thing that the ACLU does have that many of the, many other organizations do not is that we have members. And many times, and our members, we have 6,000 members in the state of Arizona, and that's almost as many as the Center for Arizona Policy. And I think that that's a plus. And I think that when we can't, some of these bills, I mean, these bills are moving forward. We try to work with when the bills, as the bills are moving forward, we try to mobilize our members to urge our members to contact legislators. And we do that through action alerts. And I've got signups for action alerts.
Do they actually pay attention to those? I guess that's what I
mean, I think it depends on the issue. And I think that, for example, a lot of times we recognize that the ACLU is not the best messenger. That there are on the 14th Amendment bill, for example, this is a core constitutional issue, but we have the business community now that has been opposed to the 14th Amendment. Why? Because they saw the devastating consequences that how SB 1070 hurt their businesses. And so now they're front and center. And so if the chambers of commerce are front and center, then that's who needs to be front and center. Here we are passing a jobs bill, and at the same time hurting Arizona, putting up a sign not open for business. And so I think we have to recognize that, and we do it on a case-by-case basis, depending on what the issue is. If we can work with family physicians or hospital groups or business groups, then we try to form coalitions that way.
But your full-time lobbyist, how does the full-time lobbyist
So we do it
work?
through a couple of ways. She will provide written testimony. She will provide testimony. She will sit down and meet. I think there is a certain level, it's important to develop relationships with both Republicans and Democrats in the legislature. There's some Republicans who are never going to respond to an ACLU call, but there are a lot of them who will, and who we have worked with on a lot of bills. And so it's developing those personal relationships there and having a presence down there at the Capitol. I think that is important to be one of the few progressive groups down there. Planned Parenthood has had a lobbyist there for quite some time, and they struggle with the same thing, is that we have seen an onslaught of anti-abortion measures like no other year. And we have to try to be creative and mobilize our members. But it is, I mean, the one thing that we have is that we litigate. And so this is just an additional tool. If I can stop these bills in the legislature, and I would say it's a 70% chance that we're not going to be able to stop them, then we will have to challenge them. But there is some of the bills we are able to stop. There's a bill that we were able to stop working with lots of other, for example, adoption groups, and there was a bill banning or giving marriage preference to adoptions. That bill again is moving this session, and I think that would have horrible consequences for a lot of the kids that are in foster care. And so it's trying to be creative and developing those personal relationships, because not all of the leadership, not all of them are as extreme as we hear about and read about in the paper. And I think that many of them, there is an opportunity there, and we have to find out what that is. Yes?
Why is the ACLU not challenging the new TSA security procedures or things at airports?
Oh, yeah, why is it not litigating? That's a really good question. It's probably...
You've been a victim, I'm asking the question, okay?
Yeah, I mean, we have found that many times on those sort of airport security measures and litigation has not been as successful as public pressure. And because they have used the context of national security and the need for beefed up security in airports.
No, I feel safe. No, I don't want to feel safe, I want to feel free.
Exactly. And I think on the airport screeners, there was so much, we launched a campaign right after they went up to really urge our members to contact folks, and we have 500,000 members nationwide, where we have legislation now at the House, at least, that will ban the scanners. But I think on the national security privacy issues, it's a little bit more difficult, and it's been a little more challenging in the courts, because the courts have given a tremendous amount of deference to the government.
I called the letter to Obama with the copies with the Palatine. I called the ACLU, were very nice in taking my report, but then, I got a stupid letter back from Transportation Security.
Oh yeah, that's it. I mean, if we're able to put enough pressure on the, I mean, our position on the scanners is, well, I mean, obviously they're extremely invasive, but they're much less intrusive and